In this video, we're going to talk about point of view and which is optimal for the story that you're trying to tell. So think about this in advance. Who best will tell the story in your book? If your book is a novel, it could be that you have multiple points of view that are used. So pronouns are a good indicator of who is telling the story. For example, if I'm telling the story, if I'm the main character and I use I, me, we, us, that is what we call first person point of view. That means the main character is telling the story himself or herself. If it's you, then it's second person point of view, and that is very rarely used. It can be used very well when it is used, but it's rare and it's not very easy to pull off. The most popular is third person point of view, where someone else is telling the story. For example, he refers to the characters, or she refers to the characters as he, she, they, them. So which is best for you? Now, if you're writing your own biography, which is called, of course, an autobiography, then first person point of view is probably really good. Or sometimes first person point of view works really well for fictional work, a novel. Now, let's dig a little bit deeper into questions that we should ask before we decide. How many perspectives do I need to tell this story? Do I want to create distance or intimacy between the reader and the character? Do I want to tell the story in my own voice or in the character's voice? So, if you need multiple perspectives to tell your story, you might use multiple point of view or experiment with third person omniscient. If you want to create intimacy between your reader and character, first person or deep point of view, which we'll talk about in just a few minutes, you could create intimacy between the author and reader with second person. But if you need a little bit more distance, try third person limited or omniscient point of view. So let's go into those. So again, first person is when you're talking from the perspective of the person who is writing the story, and you're using I and me. Second person, you're using the pronouns you. You're talking directly to the reader. But the third person is more complex. There are different types of third person point of view. For example, there's third person omniscient, third person limited, and then the deep point of view, which I spoke about earlier. So omniscient means all-knowing. That means whoever's telling the story knows everything about everybody, and they're in everybody's head. So they're not only telling the action, but they're also telling you what somebody is thinking. It can be quite awkward if you go back and forth between characters, and you're saying what Mary thinks about Jim, and then you're saying what Jim is thinking about Mary. That makes it quite difficult to follow. But there is a way that you can do it where you can go back and forth and you can tell from both people's points of views. Have you ever read a really good novel? Sometimes it might be a book about friends, and one chapter is Jane talking, and then the next chapter is Sherry talking, or there's a love story, and in one chapter you have Fred talking about Pamela, and then in the next chapter you have Pamela talking about Fred. And so it's great to know and be in both of their heads at the same time and know you know secrets that they don't know. So it's very effective, and you can see how excited I get when I talk about this third person omniscient point of view. Now, the third person limited is we remain in one character's head throughout the story. We only see things from their perspective, what they hear, what they think, what they know. But it's wonderful when we go a little bit deeper and we know more and we're in more of the characters' heads. For example, deep point of view is a style of writing that is beginning to grow in popularity. It uses third person, he, she, and they, and instead of using the author's voice, we hear it in the hero's voice. This brings the reader deep into the hero's head and allows them to experience the story through the hero, feeling what they feel. It's like the first person, except it's used with he and she and not I. So all evidence of the author's hand, phrases like he said, she felt, he wondered, are also removed to erase the distance between the reader and the hero. So you can use third person, and it doesn't have to be limited just with one person inside of one person's head. You can go back and forth. And so that is a deep point of view, and then multiple points of views can take into consideration one person telling the story and then that person's thinking, and then when you switch and have someone else telling the story, and you can also find or figure out what they're thinking as well, that's what we call multiple points of view. And so you can kind of juxtapose these, play with these, make them fun for the reader. Have beta readers review your work just to make sure that you're not losing them and that they can follow, and that you're being very consistent when you're using them. So make these work for you before you get started writing. Check these out. Review them, make sure you understand them well. Read books like what you are trying to read, what you are trying to write, to make sure you have a really good understanding and a good handle on what it is that you're producing, because you can't take it lightly, nor can you wait until after you've written it. Be informed, do your homework, do your research before you submit your manuscript, before you even put your pencil to the paper. Research and know what it is that you want to write and how you can very well write it well. Writing is an art, it's a process. It's not just the journal that you write every night. We've talked about how you can keep up with notes and you can write your story in your journal, but when it comes to putting it together for your manuscript, you want to make it the very, very best you can, clean, polished, with tenses that don't shift, as well as a point of view that's effective and packs a powerful punch. Keep writing.